It's the afternoon of September 13th, 2006. I'm Michael Aron of NJN News. We're about to interview Governor Byrne. This will be the fourth interview we've done with the governor for the Byrne Archives project, part of the Rutgers project on the governors. We're going to talk to him about the tail end of the income tax fight and other first-term accomplishments. Governor, in our last conversation, you walked us through getting the income tax passed, how difficult it was, how it took 3 years, I guess, and how the court decision really helped push it over. Is that correct?
Well, as a matter of fact, the income tax is now classically used as an example of how you can use the coordination of branches of government to work together to get an objective. And that was a pretty good example. We used the legislature to introduce the bill. We used the judicial to push forward on the need for a tax or some solution to the education project, and you need an executive to make the original proposal.
Without the Robinson versus Cahill decision, do you think the income tax would have been enacted during your time in office?
Probably not. I mean, Robinson versus Cahill gave rise to the need for doing something. And by the way, the income tax that was passed was not an income tax to raise more money. It was an income tax to raise different money. And when I campaigned in '77, I made that point, that I was not asking for more money, I was just asking for a different pocket. And so the net of all of that was basically to have the same amount of money, but a good portion of it from an income tax. And the income tax was used to support the school.
Did property taxes go down as a result?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they did. Trouble is, when property taxes go down, it doesn't take long for people to bring them back up again. And that's what's, as we sit here in 2006, that's what's making the people very cynical in New Jersey today, because they've seen it. They've seen, money wasted, and they've seen educational things become. You give me an extra $1, and the teachers want part of it, and the schools want part of it, and the standards keep going up. And if you're spending more, I want to spend more. That's the problem that the people are very cynical about today.
When your income tax package contained caps on spending growth at the local level, didn't it?
Yes, it did. But there were exceptions to the cap for various things, and
would you call it a tight cap or a loose cap that was easy to
it was
get around?
It was what we thought was a fairly tight cap, but exigencies were justified, and it kept growing. And then you have whatever Short Hills had as its per pupil. Everybody wanted that to begin with, and then it grows and feeds on itself.
Were there caps on both municipal and school district spending as part of your income tax?
I'm not visibly aware of that being so, but I think it was.
We are now 30 years after the fact, and state finances are terribly strained, as are local finances. I mean, this state has a serious fiscal problem, as the current governor, Corzine, has told us, and other governors have told us. Is that in spite of the tax you passed and created in the '70s? Is that what happened in the intervening years to
Well, first of all, we've demanded a lot more. When I look at the current budget and see some of the things that we're funding, all of which are justified, and when I see all the money we're borrowing, most of which is not justified, hasn't been justified, that I think it explains a lot. And I think what Gorzine may do, and I'm speaking now for posterity, is sell some capital assets like the turnpike in order to get us back even, so that from now on it's not just the huge debt that we're servicing with a major portion of the budget. Once you start getting rid of debt service, for example, it's going to help make it easier. And I think other states that are getting along well today are getting along because they don't have that inbred obligation to pay bond interest, pay off bonds.
You say that New Jerseyans ask a lot of their government. Is government doing more today than it was doing in your day?
When I first came into government, working for Governor Minor in 1955, the total state budget was under $500 million. And now what is it, 30 billion and counting? And that doesn't even account for the money we get off budget, like federal grants and so forth. So it's changed dramatically, and people expect things of government now that they didn't expect 50 years ago. And if you look at the budget and see what we're funding, not only the Christmas tree items, some of which are justified, but all in all, and we get these conflicting demands on government. You get an editorial one day in a paper that says we're spending too much money, we're wasting too much money, and then the next thing is an editorial about we're not doing enough for kids under the DIFAS program, or we're not spending enough on school teachers. I mean, we have to have better school teachers, and you have to do this for that. So we've just a Jekyll and Hyde kind of approach to all this.
You also said that some of the borrowing wasn't necessary, but haven't we borrowed to buy up open space and to improve transportation infrastructure
and now to do stem cell research? It's hard to turn down any of this this borrowing in terms of the merit of the project. But this is not something state government was into 50 years ago. We were not borrowing to do much other than maybe to build college dormitories. Hughes did a lot of that, or things that were highways, for instance, to do our match for federal highway. So it is changed. We're asking for it, and then we're protesting that we have to pay for it.
Let's talk about some other things during your first term. The Sports Authority. Before you became governor, you told us about the financing almost falling apart to get the Meadowlands Sports Complex built, and how it was rescued. I think you said that Prudential was involved in the financial rescue. But then you take office. At what stage is the Meadowlands Sports Complex when you take office?
No, when I was elected. When I was elected, and before I took office, I had a critical decision to make, and that was to try to get the financing. And when we looked at, and I had a couple of people looking at it, I think Jim Nazali and Lou Caden, among a small group that looked at, we decided that we were giving the Giants too much control over the stadium. And so the first thing I had to do was take a look at that. I decided that it was too much. We had a meeting with the Giants at the Princeton Club in New York, and we told them what we would sign off on. And gave him 24 hours to respond.
Had you been elected?
I'd been elected, but not sworn in. And Bill Cahill was gung ho for the deal as it had been designed, which I wasn't. And I remember Cahill calling me one day while I'm governor-elect, and he said, I have to have this bill on the board this afternoon. And if I don't, I'm going to have a press conference and declare the deal dead. And I said, Governor, I said, you can do that if you want to. I wouldn't. I said, I think I can explore something which would be acceptable to me and to this administration if I have a little time. And Cahill hung up and called me back later this afternoon. And he said, I decided not to withdraw the bill. And he gave me the time, and it was during that time when we worked out a deal that made sense. Warble never forgave me for that one. But
why not?
Because he wanted to go forward. He wanted to go forward with the deal that he had made, and
was he the head of the sports
sure, and he was frankly the inspiration for that sports authority.
Who put him in charge of the sports authority?
Cahill.
And you kept him there?
Oh, sure. I mean, you got a commodity like Sonny Werblin willing to donate time for running a sports authority. It's a terrific deal for New Jersey.
Who was Sonny Werblin?
Sonny Werblin had been head of MCA. This is an entertainment business. And he was well known nationally. I remember meeting Alfred Hitchcock one time in California. The first thing he said to me after he found out I was governor of New Jersey was, how is Sonny Werblin? And so anywhere you went in the entertainment business, people knew and respected Sonny Werblin. He just gave away too much.
Was he an owner of the Jets football team?
Yes, he was the owner of the Jets. He was also an owner of Monmouth Park. He was a partner of Leon Hess. They had a little falling out eventually, but that was part of the team with Phil Island, who was part of the Jet. But it was Sonny who broke off, got into the sports authority. The guys, Dave Valence and the rest of the group were deathly afraid that the sports complex would draw from Monmouth Park, which they owned, and Dave Valence had a great interest in. The Middlesex County Democratic Organization, headed by Dave Valence, was a very powerful and very well respected. I had a great admiration for Dave Valence. Did not want that sports complex built. Nor did a lot of other people, like environmentalists. I think a number of environmentalists were violently opposed.
Maybe that's a lesson that the environmentalists aren't always right.
Well, it turned out that the sports complex did not hurt the environmental component of the state.
I'm a little unclear. Sonny Werblin was the president of MCA.
Had been.
Had been. Did he become an owner of the Jets before he was chairman of the Sports Authority, or later? Do you recall?
I don't remember. It may have been later. I don't hold me to that.
So Cahill makes him the head of the Sports Authority. Is he a New Jerseyan or a New Yorker?
He was a New Yorker, but Sonny always used the word megalopolis, in which he tried to explain that this is not New Jersey and New York. This is an overall megalopolis without borders, and it was as much New Jersey as New York. And that's a good philosophy, by the way, and should be used more. anyway, that was his concept, and he sold that in New York.
What was his style? What was he like?
Sonny was a guy who ran around the racetrack complex in the Meadowlands picking up gum wrappers, and his theory was that it's got to start from the top. And you had to have perfection, and he insisted on it, and it set a tone for how that sports complex was run.
At what point was it built? Was it built? Was it already built by the time you became governor?
No, I put a symbolic shovel on the ground, I think, but there was nothing structurally in place at all. And if we had walked away from it, nobody would have noticed.
So during your first term, it got built.
We built it.
And you kept warbling on through.
And we had to.
Period.
Yeah, we had to build the racetrack sort of first because we had to have a financial source for dealing with the sports complex. And if we didn't have the racetrack on paper was probably the only profit center in the Meadowlands. The Giants Stadium was not particularly. As a matter of fact, the racetrack justified the building of the Giants Stadium, and without the racetrack, the Giants Stadium was not feasible.
You said that David Walentz was against the building of sports complex. Monmouth Park is thoroughbreds and it's harness racing up at the Meadowlands.
Both.
It's both.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe that was an accommodation to him to make it a harness track.
No. Harness track was more successful still. Matter of fact, there's constant talk about eliminating thoroughbred racing at the Meadowlands because we have the premier harness track in the world, but not the premier flat track. But that hasn't gotten very far, and we're part of a circuit for flat track racing. Anyway, but seriously, the harness racing is what makes the Meadowlands racetrack a first-class facility.
So the track got built first, then the stadium, and then the arena?
Yeah, the arena much later.
Did you try to get the Giants to drop New York from their name?
No. For some reason, it was a given that they would stay in New York. I think we got them to, instead of having New York on the helmets, to just have Giants on the helmet. And that was an accomplishment in itself. But Wellington Mara would never have consented to be called the New Jersey Giants. Maybe the Giants, but not the New Jersey Giants.
Aron Kramer was a key aide on the Sports Authority financing and during the '73 campaign. What are your recollections of Aron?
My recollections of Aron Kramer are that he became my teacher during the early days of the '73 campaign. Before I would go on television, I would have to spend an hour with Aron. He would run me through what was anticipated as the questioning and help me with the pro forma answers to the questions, and then let me go. They didn't have any great confidence in me as a candidate when I first became in. I had no political experience. I'd been a judge. I wasn't, up to date on all of the issues, and so they felt that I needed an Aron Kramer, and I probably did. And he would brief me on issues and claim to have some insight into what questioners were interested in the interview.
So you remember him more in connection with the '73 campaign than with the Sports Authority
project.
Yeah, the Sports Authority stuff sort of filtered through Dick Leone and Luke Hayden. And,
Your key.
yeah, yeah.
What else do you remember about the early days of the sports complex? Do you remember the first football game?
Sure. And I don't know, thank God it's changed now, but in those days, politicians at sporting events got booed lustily, no matter what. And certainly when the racetrack opened, and the racetrack was the first thing opened before the stadium. When the racetrack opened, and I participated in the opening publicly, I got booed unmercifully because it was also the first time that there had been a withholding of a state income tax from your paycheck.
Same week.
And people, people were ready to kill me. I mean, we really felt we might be in some physical danger. And so forget about I built the racetrack. People were remembering, and we went through a lot of hard times at that time. But we got it done. We got it done. And eventually, in 1977, when we ran for re-election, we ran on the theory that we got things done. You don't have to love me, but I got things done, and I hope you vote for me.
Some critics said that the stadium would create massive traffic jams. Were you worried?
Well, we worried enough so that we did explore rail access to the sports complex. And we tried trains into New York and shuttle buses into the stadium. And people didn't go for it. And so bad as the traffic is, it's not impossible, and people would rather take the car.
And now,
Still?
And now 30 years later,
they're still
talking about a rail link into the
But
Meadowlands.
well, with the proposed new stadium, they're talking about a very convenient rail access, so you get off the train and into the stadium, no switching into.
I can understand why a New Jerseyan would not want to take a train into Manhattan and cross the Hudson twice.
I don't think you have to do that. I think that.
No, but back in those days, if you were saying you could take the train
probably
to the Penn Station and then
a
shuttle bus.
Yeah.
What did it mean to New Jersey to have a professional football team playing?
I think it was a plus for New Jersey, even though it said New York on the uniform. The fact that we now had a professional football team playing in New Jersey, and that if the mayor of New York wanted to see a New York football team, he had to come to New Jersey. And we exploited that.
How?
A little bit, but by pointing it out and inviting the mayor and governor to come over. Incidentally, Hugh Carey was not a big fan of the New York Giants football team and did not fight too hard to have him stay in New York. Rockefeller did, but Hugh Carey did not. And so he was a sort of a good riddance. I don't think he got along too well with Wellington Mara. And so that part was easy.
So had he been more of a Giants fan or a better friend of Wellington Mara, New Jersey might have had a tougher time getting the Giants?
No, but because Hugh would have had to find a home for the Giants. And at that point, even though they talked about building a stadium over the rail yards, they really hadn't a good location for the Giants in New York. Still don't. Came up again a year or so ago. And so New Jersey was and is the logical home.
This was the first major professional sports team. No, was this the first major professional sports team in the state of New Jersey, or were the Nets already?
Major league team. I mean,
Major league. Yeah.
guys like me remember the old Newark Bears that were better than the Yankees for a while in Rupert Stadium in Newark. But yes, it was the first major league sports. We had been having discussions with the Yankees because the Yankees had been unhappy with the status of Yankee Stadium and with the support the Yankees were getting from New York. And I had several very preliminary discussions with George Steinbrenner about moving the Yankees to New Jersey.
Was he interested?
George said to somebody in the last couple of years that if Brendan had stayed there, we'd be over in New Jersey. But I think that was a nice compliment to me. But I think the Yankees had to stay not only in New York but in the Bronx.
There's a lot of interest in the Meadowlands yet again because it's going through a new phase in its life. The Xanadu project has been started and not finished. And the Nets are leaving and the Devils are leaving, most likely. Has the Meadowlands been a success or a failure?
Well, first of all, the teams that are leaving are still there. And so from that standpoint, it's a success. Whether the Nets will ever actually go to New York, and whether the Devils will ever go to Newark, is, as we sit here, problematical. And actually, the Meadowlands has been a good location from the standpoint of... the other thing wrong with the Meadowlands Arena, first of all, it's got the wrong name now, but is that they don't have enough luxury boxes. The arena itself is an ideal location for watching both hockey and basketball. I've never heard anybody complain that you don't have a good seat at the Meadowlands Arena. And so what's drawing away from the Meadowlands is the fact that there are not enough luxury boxes. And so we'll see how that plays out.
Couldn't they have retrofitted some luxury boxes into the existing?
They did at one point. I mean, they certainly did it at the Giants Stadium. Whether the Meadowlands, I'm not sure they sell out the boxes at the arena, even now. And they're going to find it hard to sell those 200 boxes at the new Giants-Jets Stadium. You watch.
Really?
Yep. And I think there may even be something in the contract that allows them to back out if they can't pre-sell them.
Back out of the whole stadium deal?
Yep.
You brought up the name of the Meadowlands Arena, which is now the Continental Airlines Arena. We might as well bring up that controversy here while we're on the subject. I guess it was at the end of your second term that your aides decided that a fitting memorial to you and your 2 terms in office would be to put your name on that arena. Is that correct?
I didn't do that.
I didn't say you did that. I said your aides.
Well, no, the authority itself suggested it. As a matter of fact, the original suggestion was that they name the racetrack after Cahill and the arena after me, and I thought that was fine. Cahill decided he didn't want that, and so it was left with just naming the arena. I didn't want the racetrack because they would have called it the Byrne Downs, and I figure let that one alone.
So around 1982, your name went up and stood up there until Governor Whitman ordered it down.
Yeah.
Some 10 or 12 years later, I guess on the...
Well, they
tell the story.
No, all of a sudden I got a call that they sold the naming rights. And it didn't upset me as much as you may think.
You joke about it to this day.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And Continental has been a good citizen of New Jersey. It's a great airline, and I'm not. It doesn't keep me awake any nights.
You had crossed her politically right around that time too. I think it had to do with
Yes.
Bob Mulcahy's
Yes.
tenure as the head of the Sports Authority. When
Yes.
she took office, she wanted to make a change, and the authority board extended his contract.
Sure.
You were on the authority.
Sure.
You voted for that.
I introduced it.
Was this payback from Governor Whitman?
Oh, it may have been, but I think I saved her from making a big mistake. I mean, Bob Mulcahy was totally professional, and he knew how to run that sports authority, and was doing a good job at it, and had the respect of everybody in the sports world. And now, when we hear rumors that he's going to be fired and that maybe some political person would be put in charge, it portended disaster. And I think today she would admit that I was right and she was wrong on that issue. Now, I can understand also that she's now the governor, and the first full day she's governor, she called me. And I'm flattered that was her first priority, to get rid of me and tell me she was replacing me. But I think I did her a favor. I really do.
The Meadowlands was once viewed as a more comprehensive community with housing and commercial space and so on. That hasn't really happened.
I don't think it was. Not housing. It may have been an incentive for development, but that wasn't part of the original plan. There was an aquarium in the original plan, and that was abandoned and transferred to Camden, as you remember. But this was not like the thing in Brooklyn, which is planned as a whole overall development. As I knew it, it was just the sports complex itself, with maybe an arena.
Do you have a feeling about Xanadu as an add-on to the original concept? I mean, some people are saying this is just a mall.
I don't know what they're going to do with Xanadu. I mean, with the ski slope and all that, and how that fits in with the sports teams. I've never been able to get my arms around that deal.
You're not enthusiastic about it.
I just don't know enough about it. I mean, how real it all is, how far along they are, how feasible it is, how it's being financed. It's just a lot of ifs for me. My personal preference would have been to leave the whole thing as it was. It was a very nice sports complex with no circuses and no bazaars and no, flea bags, flea circuses. Anyway.
Flea markets, I think
yeah,
they
flea
call
market, right. And billboards, that's all been added since my concept of it. And if you see a picture of it from the early 80s, it was a nice looking enterprise, and it didn't look commercialized, and it looked first class New Jersey, which is what I was interested in.
Was that your vision of New Jersey, trying to make everything first class in this gritty industrial state?
Well, it wouldn't hurt to have some. First class, nice New Jersey. I started with the Pinelands, wanting the pristine Pinelands preserved, and I think that the Meadowlands had that. Atlantic City, even, which is another one of my babies, should be first class, and it's shaping up that way.
You dealt with Wellington Mara, the Giants owner, a fair amount.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Tough, very nice guy, very nice, smooth, old-fashioned Irishman, soft-spoken, but don't try to get anything by him. And, totally committed to the Giants.
Did you frequent the sports complex a lot?
When I was governor?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, the governor has a box at the Giants Stadium, and I would go to a lot of games, not nearly all of them, but matter of fact, Mrs. Mara thought I brought bad luck to the Giants. So,
What did you think?
actually, I would leave the game early, and they'd be ahead, and then when I would leave, they'd lose.
I believe during your first term, you took Liberty Park in Jersey City and turned it into Liberty State Park. Tell us about that.
Well, I knew nothing about Liberty State Park except it was there. And one day, I think David Bardeen, who was my environmental commissioner, started a concept of making it into a major state park and attraction. And I remember his getting some help from Prudential Insurance Company and making a presentation to some business leaders and causing some excitement. And frankly, I give David Bardeen credit for taking that off the moribund list and bringing it into fruition. David Bardeen doesn't get enough credit for Liberty State Park. David was my environmental commissioner and was a very interesting guy, very dedicated guy, controversial, and a character.
Where'd you get him from?
When I hired him, he was doing some project in Israel. There's no analogies there, but he was.
Yeah, we spoke about him when we talked about filling your cabinet. It's coming back to me.
Yeah.
What a character he said he was. What about the cities? Were they a focus of your first term?
Yes. I think probably one of my failures. I didn't do enough to get the cities rehabilitated. And it's a tough job. It's still not where it should be. And I tried doing things like insisting that any new state offices be located in cities like Newark or Trenton, rather than in the suburbs, and a couple other things to help the cities and give money to this project or that project, or this hospital or that hospital. I always felt that there was a lot that could be done if we had the money, and we never really had the money. And we worked, for instance, with the Archdiocese of Newark, because they had an original concept of building from the Sacred Heart Cathedral all the way down to Penn Station and cleaning that whole area up. It never much got off the ground. The concept was good, and you have to do it in big chunks. You can't take a block in Newark. They tried to do it with James Street, remember? But you have to change the
Talk
whole
about
area.
James Street for a second, because that is interesting. It's a block or two in downtown Newark near the museum.
Yep.
That looks like a very gentrified part
Yes.
of Manhattan or Brooklyn.
Exactly. But the trouble is it's surrounded by too much light and too much problem. And so James Street, good idea, wouldn't be a bad place to live, but it doesn't have a character, a neighborhood character that it needs, and that's what we needed.
Newark was still probably suffering white flight in the 70s and on the heels of the 67
Yeah,
riot.
and where
Yes?
you do see it coming back now is around it starts with the medical school. And the area around the medical school, hospital and the medical school, is broadening out little by little into better housing and better neighborhoods, and you're seeing some change. But you almost have to do something wholesale. I mean, Camden is a good example. The only way to solve Camden's problem is to tear it down. And we're not ready to do that yet, but that's where I would go if I had the power and the money.
Community schools also were built in cities with theaters, pools, other amenities for the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Is this still a good concept?
It's a good concept. How well it's working, I'm not sure. And one of the problems in some of the cities is that you can't maintain the kind of vision that you start out with. I mean, you build an athletic field, they tear it apart in almost no time. So it's a massive undertaking. I think Cory Booker in Newark is going to get somewhere with these concepts. And I think he's genuinely dedicated, willing to put the time, effort, money, and commitment into rehabilitating neighborhoods in Newark. But you have people living in hovels and places where it doesn't make sense. You got to change that.
Did you create the Economic Development Authority?
Yes, early on.
Early on?
We did that in the first term, yes.
Was that urban-oriented, or did it have other
Well,
purposes?
it was sort of urban-oriented. It was oriented toward getting businesses a break in New Jersey, businesses that might not ordinarily have stayed in New Jersey. I refused to use it for casino development because they had no place else to go. They're sort of using it more now. But yes, that worked, and it's still working. It's one of the major things we have in New Jersey.
Was it an idea? Do you remember the genesis of the idea? Was it a campaign pledge? Was it a concept you brought into office? Was it somebody else's concept?
Well, it came out of my administration. Yeah, nobody else was doing it at the time. Everybody's doing it now. But yeah.
You said that Camden, the best thing to do would be to tear it down and start all over again.
Yeah.
How about Atlantic City? In retrospect, would you have torn it down and started all over again?
Well, couldn't do that. We started in Atlantic City. First of all, we started by everybody criticizing everything we did. I started on being supportive of Atlantic City when early on in my term there was a nice lady by the name of Lillian Bryan, whose father I knew was the first black member of Dick Hughes' cabinet, so I got to know. And I got to know Lillian. And so when she ran for some local office, I went down and spent a Sunday campaigning in some of the bad neighborhoods of Atlantic City. And I said to myself, we got to do something. And we explored, at one point we explored going out to see Disney, see if he wants to come and build a Disneyland concept in Atlantic City. He says, I don't make money in California until Thanksgiving. And so having 3 months or 4 months in Atlantic City, it's just not doable. So it was then we went into casino again. Atlantic City had long been on the downslide. I remember I remember in 1964 we had the Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City, and it was a disaster. The story is that George Meany, who was then head of the AFL-CIO, goes in, and a former plumber, goes into one of the hotels, goes up to his room, turns on the faucet, and winds up with the faucet in his hand. And he goes down to the desk and says, I'm a plumber, but I'm on vacation. And so that's the kind of reputation we got out of that '64 convention. And it never recovered from that. So we had to do something. And we tried the casinos. It worked. Now, everybody said, well, it's only on the boardwalk, and the rest of it's still a failure. But if you go to Atlantic City even today, and you walk from the boardwalk to the new convention hall, you've got a beautiful walk, and you've got a shopping area there, and the rest of Atlantic City is coming in behind that. There's still some bad areas, but there's some bad areas in Las Vegas too.
Does State Senator Bill Gormley deserve some credit for?
I give him some credit because he's been able to keep things together in Atlantic City. He's been able to have the vision, been able to represent and be a spokesman for the casino industry. I got to like Bill Gormley and respect him, even though he fought me tooth and nail on the Pinelands.
Did he?
Yeah. And I can understand. I think he'd mellowed on that too, because the original opposition to the Pinelands was from farmers who didn't know what was happening. Their land was being restricted for development. They were, even if they were just farmers, you know, without any other agenda, they did have to use the land to borrow money to do the crops. And if I did the Pinelands and the value of the land went down, the security went down, and they had problems. I fully understand that.
Whose idea was casino gambling? Do you recall?
Oh, it had been promoted in Atlantic City for several years before. And as a matter of fact, nobody remembers this, but there was a bill in several years before I became governor, sponsored by Hap Farling. It was a story in itself. And I actually testified in favor of that bill.
Farley was the state senator from Atlantic County in those days, before Gormley.
Right.
He was a Republican?
Sure.
So he was pushing...
He was the most powerful politician in South Jersey.
There
was a sentiment in Atlantic City that we've got to have casino gambling at some point.
And you testified in favor of it when you were,
but everybody else...
prosecutor?
I was a judge. I was either a judge or I think probably a public utility commissioner. I don't think I testified as a judge. I think as a public utility commissioner, having had experience for 9 years as a prosecutor. And you know, I knew about gambling. As a matter of fact, there was an old saw at the time that legalizing gambling would be a ratification of what's going on. It's called a validating act.
Because everybody was gambling illegally.
Anyway.
So after you took office and looked at Atlantic City and talked to Mr. Disney and learned that was a pipe dream, you embraced casino gambling as the solution?
First, I embraced it. First they put it on the ballot as legalizing gambling in New Jersey, and I did not support that, and it failed. So then the next year, they put it back on the ballot, limited to Atlantic City, which is what I said I would support, and I did. I supported the casino. I'm told that I'm the only governor in the 20th century who would have supported casinos in Atlantic City.
Only New Jersey governor.
Tom Kaine was voted against it, still against it.
Jim Florio.
Wouldn't touch it. Cahill said it's the worst thing I ever did. And you needed a governor with my credentials, frankly, to be out front and guarantee the people that could be run without organized crime running it.
Who were the key casino industry people that you remember from that time?
Gee, I don't remember much about who. I remember one thing I tried to do in all of this was to get some of the recognized hotel people, not solely casino people like Stardust or something like that. I went to see the Marriotts, and they wouldn't touch it. No, they were Mormons and wouldn't sell Playboy. So anyway, that didn't work. So I gave up on them. But I did go down to see a man by the name of Kemmons Wilson, who had started Holiday Inns. And I thought that would be a nice name to have in Atlantic City. And Steve Persky and I went out down to Memphis and sat with their board, and I talked Kemmons Wilson into buying something in Atlantic City, which he did.
Persky at the time was state senator from that.
Yeah,
from
one of the
Atlantic
sponsors.
County?
It wasn't
A Democrat.
Yeah, I've said this often. If it weren't for Steve Persky, I wouldn't have supported the referendum, because I had great confidence that Steve Persky was a guy who was clean, who was smart, who was knowledgeable, who wouldn't let the thing get away from us.
One of your most famous moments as governor, I guess it happened in the second term, was when you opened the first casino and gave a speech on the boardwalk.
That was the first time.
That was the first term? Uh-huh. Was it Resorts International that opened first?
Yeah.
And do you recall what you said?
When I opened it?
Well, yeah. You said you had a message to the mob.
Yes, keep your filthy hands out of Atlantic City. Yeah.
That line has resonated.
And by the way, I had a state police superintendent who I had full confidence in, named of Clint Pagano, and I had charged Clint Pagano with doing everything that the state police could do to keep casinos clean. And I think the word got out that New Jersey's not going to tolerate this, and I don't think there was even a real effort to bring organized crime into any casinos, because we were so scrupulous in the licensing procedures. I mean, we turned down somebody because he had once hired a lawyer who had once represented some mobsters, and we made it so tough that I don't think they wanted to tackle us.
Some of your key people opposed the entire project. Dick Leone, Bill Hyland were against.
John Degnan?
Degnan as well?
Sure. A lot of people opposed to it. They didn't think I could do it. Most of them have come back and told me they were wrong.
Was it a water cooler subject in your office?
No, but you know, Dick Leone comes in to say, why do you want to be remembered as the guy who brought gambling into Atlantic City? And I do. Because we did it honestly, and I'm convinced that if we hadn't done it and done it successfully, it wouldn't be in existence anywhere else.
You talk about how scrupulous you were in trying to keep the mob out. You set up two regulatory arms: the Casino Control Commission that would license the casinos, and the Division of Gaming Enforcement within the Attorney General's office that would.
We patterned that basically after Nevada. I spent a fair amount of time studying what was going on in Nevada has several meetings with Harry Reid, who's now, as we speak, the Democratic minority leader in the United States Senate.
What was he back then?
He was Attorney General, I think. So yeah, that's how we patterned it. We had a number of original decisions to make. One of which would have been to have one big casino in Atlantic City, which was either publicly owned and run, or at least the one casino where everybody went to the hotels, but then had to go to the casino. I think either Montreal or Toronto has that concept. But what we came up with, I think, works.
That's interesting. It's so different from today from what it would have been had you gone with one casino.
Maybe not. Who knows? I don't know how it's working in Canada, but apparently it is.
To what extent was it part of your motivation in bringing casino gambling to Atlantic City to bring a little more excitement and attention to New Jersey?
I think we did a number of things to build excitement in New Jersey. Casino gambling was one. I mean, Atlantic City. I insisted, by the way, that the casinos have live entertainment. Originally 7 days a week, but that didn't make sense in the wintertime, especially. But anyway, I wanted Atlantic City to be known as an entertainment center, and I think it now is. I mean, recently I saw that Barbra Streisand's coming into Atlantic City. Wouldn't have happened without me. And then we had the Meadowlands, which was an exciting thing, and then we've used that to emphasize that there are a lot of other great things in New Jersey that have become an attraction. I mean, even Princeton has a glamour aspect to it now.
There were some pretty tight restrictions on the casinos when they first opened. No all-night gambling, for example. Many of those restrictions have been eased up over the years. Were you perhaps too restrictive at the beginning?
We may have been, but I think we got the message across. And I think today there is nobody saying we want to ease the restrictions so we can bring organized crime into an area where without the restrictions they wouldn't go. Organized crime is not today, even in Vegas, is not today a factor in casino. I don't think organized crime owns a casino in Vegas.
Did they in those days?
Sure. As a matter of fact, I remember I used to be a district attorney, was active in the National District Attorneys Association, and we would meet from time to time in Vegas. And before I went to Vegas, I would call the FBI and I would say, where does J. Edgar Hoover stay when he goes to Vegas? And I would stay wherever he stayed.
Really?
Yeah. And you knew, I mean, you knew which mob owned which casino.
There were also tough restrictions on casino marketing, controls on neon signs, on ads, TV ads, and so forth.
Couldn't see the casino from the boardwalk. And I wanted
not allowed to see into the casino from the boardwalk?
Still can't.
Was that overly stringent?
That was because I wanted, I probably failed at this, I wanted the Atlantic City revival to be part of what Atlantic City used to be, which is basically a family resort. That has not taken place. Although in the summertime families go and there's things to do and bring the kids to the beach, but by and large people do not go to Atlantic City to have vacation with the kids. they'll go to neighborhood beaches, and it has revived the New Jersey shore. And I think Cape May has benefited from the fact that Atlantic City is close at hand. I mean, you can go to Cape May, one of those nice resort towns in Cape May, and sneak up to Atlantic City at night. And it's an asset.
Did Cape May become the family resort
Oh,
on the
Cape
shore?
May is a great family resort. You ever been there?
Yeah.
Wonderful. There's a lot of good restaurants in Cape May. Sounds like my daughter is in charge of travel and tourism, doesn't it?
When you talked about the mob in Vegas, I immediately thought of the Sands Hotel and Frank Sinatra, and I don't know if the Sands was connected to the mob or not, but I remember that name and that image from that era. Did Sinatra have any role in Atlantic City? He's a New Jerseyan, a New Jersey native. Did he come back?
Well, I think Sinatra made appearances in Atlantic City. I don't know that Sinatra ever had any interest in any casino in Atlantic City. And I got to know Frank Sinatra a little bit.
When you were governor?
Yeah.
Tell us.
How I got to know him? Oh, I don't know how I got to know him, but I got to know him, and then I had dinner with him once or twice, and mutual friends. But yeah, I got to know him, and I actually played tennis with Barbara Sinatra a couple of times. And when I would see Frank, he'd say, "Barbara wants to know when you're going to play tennis with her again." That kind of small talk.
Was he an important person in New Jersey when you were governor?
Sure.
Because he came from Hoboken.
He came from Hoboken. He said nice things about me. We had some mutual friends. I still have on my wall an autographed picture of Frank Sinatra to me. And we would have conversations.
I have a note.
He never asked me to do anything. And you remember, at one point, he had a run-in with Joel Jacobson, who was on the Casino Control Commission. Joel accused him of bullying somebody at the table to deal a single deck or something like that. So he had mixed emotions toward New Jersey.
Was there an SCI investigation?
Sure.
Of?
I think of something that collateralized Frank, but I don't remember it. I have one funny Frank Sinatra story. I was over in Hong Kong one time, and some nice lady took care of my kids and gave them a tour of Hong Kong. And then I'm trying to figure out how to reciprocate. And so they said, I'm coming over with my two sisters, and we're big Frank Sinatra fans, and we'd like to see Frank Sinatra. So he was at the Garden State Arts Center, and I arranged for these three young ladies to have the pictures taken with Frank Sinatra. And it works. We got the pictures taken with Frank. Now, a couple of months later, Frank is being interrogated by some, I think, congressional committee about having his picture taken with some alleged mobster. And Frank says in answer, "Hey, look, somebody brings in three girls from Hong Kong and have my pictures taken. What do I know about it?" I'll never forget that. But Frank also knew an old priest who was a songwriter who I knew, and we would talk about the priest once in a while.
You mentioned that you wanted to keep state offices from being built in the suburbs or leased in the suburbs. You wanted to keep them in the cities, like Trenton. Trenton's still a troubled city. You have any ideas on what could be done in Trenton?
Well, Trenton is doing better, and I formed a separate building corporation in Mercer County that were doing building in Trenton. The Mary Roebling building, I think, is an example. And so I did all I could under the circumstances to accommodate office buildings in downtown Trenton, and to discourage going out to the suburb. There's a lot of it going on since, but that was my concept.
What are the great cities of New Jersey?
West Orange is my hometown, and which I still regard as my hometown.
Seriously, what are the cities? Give us your take on the cities. I mean, I say great cities, and we don't have a great city. We have small cities, but what are the cities that mean something to you?
I think you always start with Newark, Jersey City. I include Patterson, Bayonne. Believe it or not, some of the cities which you don't realize are cities. Hamilton Township, by the way, is a big city. It votes more people than Trenton does. Woodbridge. And it depends on what you're looking for. Phillipsburg. Not so big, but it's a city.
You forgot the South. Trenton, Atlantic City, and
Camden. Trenton, yeah. And Millville.
And Millville.
Yeah.
Beautiful downtown Millville.
Oh, I like it down there.
It's almost like another country down there. I mean, not another country, but another state down there, isn't it?
But I like Cumberland and Salem counties.
You like, pardon me? What?
I like Cumberland and Salem counties. Sure.
Bridgeton, that's a little city.
Yeah. Used to be where Campbell's Soup made ketchup.
Bridgeton?
Sure. Pride of the Farm ketchup, remember that? You don't remember.